What's up, pretty people? Bins here, signing in for a new episode in the Shapez BEASTMAM series. Today marks the first video where I'd like to direct your attention to the structure and organization of these videos, as the third chapter in our BEASTMAM series will be the first to consist of more than one video. So in the first chapter, which was an introductory chapter, I spoke about why building a SI TMAM is so difficult, and then in the second chapter, I gave you a macroscopic overview of the machine, both on the wiring layer as the physical one. The third chapter, this chapter, is called Concepts, and in it, I want to talk about, well, a few concepts, some game mechanics that this machine heavily relies on and that I feel like we should address separately in order to be able to get this video series rolling, right? Now, the first of these concepts, and that will be our scope for today, is in-game ticks. What are ticks? What's the importance of tick precision? And how can you manipulate them in order to synchronize different modules with one another? Therefore, Chapter 3, Concepts, Subchapter A, Tick Precision. Alrighty then, let's talk about ticks. For those of you that don't know what ticks are yet, ticks are essentially an in-game unit of time. It may be a bit of an oversimplification to put it like that, but that's essentially what it comes down to. A unit of time. More specifically, a tick is the time it takes a virtual unit, any unit on the wiring layer, to accept input, process it, and then provide output. So, let's have a look at this example shape. Let's say that from this shape, we would want to isolate the colored quadrant on the bottom layer and output it to a display. We could do that using the following setup. This setup has 8 units, and therefore the process will take 8 ticks to complete. A demonstration: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So back to the machine. This machine tries a new shape combination every tick. And the obvious question is, how is that possible if a simple module like the one we've just seen already requires 8 ticks to perform its intended task? Well, the thing is that both of these things don't necessarily contradict each other. While the process of our little module, this one right here, lasts 8 ticks, it doesn't impede us from firing multiple units through the machine. So we don't need to wait for an output to be given before we feed a new input. So if, for example, I feed a new signal every tick, then they will all travel through the machine at the same speed and make it out the other end 8 ticks later. So let's demonstrate that. First, we are going to do red. Let's try that again. So, red, and we advance 1 tick. Now I'm going to change the input for the second shape. We advance 1 tick. Third shape. We advance 1 tick. And the fourth shape. We advance 1 tick. And then we cut the line. And now you see that all of these units, all of these shapes, they are queued. You know, they are in a file, so to speak, in a single file, and they are making their way through the machine. So 3 more ticks and red will be coming out. That's 1, 2, 3. And now on the next tick, we get red, yellow, green, blue, cut. So, and this principle is what the entire decoder of this machine hinges on. While it might take the first signal quite a while to travel through all of the modules, the inputs do switch in rapid succession, meaning that at any given time, dozens or maybe even hundreds of different shape combinations are traveling through this machine simultaneously. But there's a problem. Let's look at this other little module I prepared. Let's say we have an input shape, and for some reason, which is irrelevant for this video, but for some reason, we would want to take the top layer off, paint it white, and then stack it back with the rest. We could do that with a module that looks like this. So let's connect the wire and see how it works. It takes 1, 2, 3, 4 ticks to complete. But now let's look what happens if we change the input every tick, right? That's yellow and we advance, then green, advance 1 tick, and now blue, and advance final tick, and then cut. In the meantime, we already see that there is a desynchronization. So the white circle has been stacked on top of the yellow square, and if we advance, we see that the white square is stacked on top of the green star. And if we advance one more, we see that the star is stacked on top of the blue windmill. And that is not what we want. And the reason this happens is because there is a fork in the road. And after the fork, it doesn't take both paths equally long to move their inputs to the point where they come together again. So if these signals take the bottom route, then the amount of units they traveled through is 1, 2, 3. But if they take the top route, then it's 1 and 2. And that's why this desynchronization occurs. So how can we counteract that? Well, we have to take the weakest link, so to speak. That would be this route, the longest route, and we have to equalize all of the paths. So we need to make sure that all of the routes a shape can take are equally long, and then it is synchronized. And this can be done with any unit. Since we have fully symmetrical shapes here, for example, I could take a rotator, and that wouldn't matter. So now let's try that again. Let's do red first, connect the wire, advance 1 tick, then we do yellow, we advance 1 tick, then we do the green star, advance 1 tick, and now we do the blue windmill, and we advance 1 tick, and we cut the line. And now we see the circle is stacked on top of the circle, the square on top of the square, the star on top of the star, the windmill on top of the windmill, and cut the line. That is how we synchronize ticks. Now this example is very simple, and I can tell you, I can promise you that in this machine, this mechanic accumulates very quickly and becomes very complex. So let's look at another example I prepared. And this is more of an actual unit. I have this unit in the machine as well, and it's a smart combiner. So what I want to do, the combiner is Shapez Industries exclusive. What I want it to do is, if it receives 2 inputs from the bottom, I want the output to be the combined shape. But if it receives only one of 2 inputs from the bottom, I also want that single input to be output. And you need a smart setup, kind of like this, for that. So now, let's see what happens if we connect both inputs. This is the red circle, and this is the green square. And we need 1, 2 ticks to complete the process, right? If I cut the blue line, then we need 1, 2, 3 ticks to complete the process. Not only that, but there was also an interruption on the line. If I cut this and I swap the inputs, then we need 1, 2, and if I put both inputs back, then we are going to get 1, 2, which is a conflict, and then 3 again. So how can we tick synchronize this? This is a bit less straightforward. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make the combined shape, I'm going to make sure that that is as slow as the weakest link, which in this case is 3 ticks. So what I do is I take this down, or rather I take this up. We do have the space. Take this up, and I'm going to place diodes here. The diodes are very convenient here. Okay, so let's try that. Again, we connect both inputs. 1, 2, 3. That's more like it. Disconnecting one output. 1, 2, 3. Great. Try the other one. 1, 2. So you can see we're not there yet, because if I connect this wire again, 1, 2, conflict, 3. So we are still not done yet. And the reason why we still have a conflict is because these lines, if we follow these lines, you see that they don't have the same amount of ticks. So in order to remedy that, we need to add extra ticks on those lines as well. So this is what our tick synchronized module would look like. Let's do a final test. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Swap the inputs. 1, 2, 3. And put both inputs back. 1, 2, 3. And finally, we cut the lines. 1, 2, 3. This is a tick synchronized unit. And I can tell you that this was very complex. Okay, how all of this comes together, because it accumulates, right? This tick synchronization. Now you don't need to do that within units, not only within units, but also across units. And that is the reason why in my machine you can spot these long lines of just diodes, right? The only purpose those long chains of diodes serve is keeping this machine tick synchronized, so that no matter which route any signal takes, it will always be the same distance. I do not know which distance this is by heart, but I can tell you that this was a lot of trial and error, and if as much as one diode is missing from this machine, it becomes unusable, right? It collapses. This needs to be perfect, and that's really a challenge. So you can see that, you know, I have these long lines of diodes right here, and they all serve the same purpose, which is keeping this machine tick synchronized. Now there is another benefit to tick synchronization that I want to talk about, and that is keeping your belts conflict free. So let's have a look at this example, right? This is a setup that you can use if on a line you would want to have either a truthy input being either a shape value, a color value, or a Boolean 1, right? We want either a truthy input or on this line or 0. So we want a lag of signal to be converted to 0. Now, look at what happens if I connect the line. We get a conflict here for 1 tick, for 2 ticks, and only on the 3rd tick, the signal will go through. And why is that? Because we have a feedback loop here, and we have an implicit fork in the road. The fork in the road is right here. If the signal takes the bottom route, then it will pass through immediately. So it takes 1 tick from the signal on the left to make it to the right. But if it takes this route right here, the top route, then it will go 1, then 2, and only on the 3rd tick, it will make it to the display on the right. And that's why we have 2 ticks of conflict. If we remove the signal, we have 2 ticks of null value. So look at this, 1, 2, and only on the third tick, it swaps to a 0. How can we counteract this? Well, again, by tick synchronizing both lines. And since we have 1, 2 units here, we need to delay this by 1, 2 ticks. And now you will see that this is tick synchronized if we connect the line 1, 2, 3, and if we disconnect it again, 1, 2, 0. That's how that works. And that's how I wanted to talk about today, because if you get into more complex wiring and you want to make it fast so that it can process a lot of input. If you want the input to switch faster than it takes your machine to process from A to Z, then you will need this tick precision. And as I said before, one diode more or less can be the difference between success and utter failure, right? The entire house of cards can just fall apart if there is as much as one tick missing. So take it from me that this was a lot of trial and error, a lot of sighing, a lot of trying again, a lot of swearing, a lot of giving up on life, but then finally, we made it. And that's what I wanted to talk about today, because it's a really fundamental issue to this machine. And I think with that, we can wrap it up. So that was the first concept I wanted to talk about. Let's unpause the game again so we can see these pretty shapes rolling over the screen. That was the first concept I wanted to talk about. I don't want to get ahead of myself and tell you what the next episode will be about, but if you are interested to find out, then I would recommend hitting that subscribe button, hitting the notification bell so you get those updates, all that good stuff. And if you enjoyed the video, please do leave a like, leave a nice comment. It's always greatly appreciated. And then the last thing for me to do is thank you for watching and wishing you an excellent day. I am out. Take care. Bye-bye.